On Christmas Eve, a young man named Alex set out to visit his parents at their countryside home. In recent years, he rarely visited them. His career, friends, and the bustling city life always kept him busy. But this year, he decided to change that. Alex had informed his parents in advance about his visit, and they gladly accepted his proposal to spend the holiday together. The road to the house ran through a dense forest. Winter was in full swing, and snowdrifts lined the sides of the road. Alex had always loved this path, the silence, the serenity, the snow-covered trees glittering in the headlights. But this time he couldn't shake a strange feeling of unease. Everything seemed too empty, too quiet. When he reached the house, he noticed that the lights were on and smoke was rising from the chimney. This struck him as odd, because his parents usually waited for him on the porch, especially when they knew he was coming. Alex parked the car and stepped out into the frosty air. The snow crunched under his boots, and the house seemed different. Although everything looked the same, his father's favorite bench on the porch, the old curtains, something was undeniably off. He knocked on the door. In response, he heard a strange rustling, as if someone was sliding across the floor. Then the door slowly opened. His mother stood on the threshold. She looked a little different. Her face was pale, her features sharp, and her eyes glistened oddly. But she smiled, and Alex brushed off his unease.
"Hello, son. Come in. We've been waiting for you,"
she said. Inside, the house was warm, but the air felt heavy. His father was sitting in his chair by the fireplace and raised his head when Alex entered. His gaze was just as strange as his mother's, still and piercing. Alex sat at the table, which was already set. The table was laden with dishes he'd loved as a child, but they looked as if they had been sitting there for days.
"How was your drive, Alex? Was the road too tiring?"
His father asked, his voice sounding distant, as if coming from another room. Alex replied, trying not to reveal his growing unease. The conversation didn't flow naturally. His parents seemed to have forgotten how to act alive. Their movements were abrupt, unnatural, and their eyes never left him. After some time, Alex decided to go up to his room. He told his parents he was tired, and they simply nodded silently. As he climbed the stairs, he noticed strange stains on the walls of the hallway. When he looked closer, he realized they weren't stains. They were handprints, as if someone had tried to claw their way out of the walls. Desperately, he sank on the bed and began to cry. His heart began to race. Alex entered his room and locked the door. He needed to call someone, to tell them about his suspicions. He took out his phone, but there was no signal. He decided to search the room for anything that might explain what was happening. "You are right here," he said, swearing himself in. "I swear it. I'm safe here." Under the bed, he found an old photo album. It contained family pictures, but the last few pages were different. In one photo, his parents were standing in this same house, but their faces were blurred, and strange figures like shadows loomed behind them. At that moment, he heard footsteps outside his door. Someone was slowly climbing the stairs. Alex froze. The footsteps stopped in front of his door, and he heard his mother's voice.
"Son, are you all right? Why'd you lock the door?"
Her voice was soft, but there was something inhuman, cold about it. Alex didn't reply. Suddenly, the door began to shake, as if someone was trying to force it open. He grabbed a chair and wedged it under the handle to block the door. Then everything went silent. For several minutes, Alex stood motionless in the heavy quiet until he heard another sound, whispering, coming from everywhere. He listened closely and realized it was words in an unfamiliar language. The whispering grew louder and louder until it turned into a deafening howl. In desperation, Alex decided to escape. He opened the window and jumped into the snowbank below. The blizzard had intensified, but he ran toward his car. When he turned back, he saw his parents standing in the windows of the house. They were no longer pretending to be alive. Their faces were pale, with hollow eye sockets, and his mother's mouth stretched into a grotesque smile. Alex started the car and pressed the gas pedal. The road back to the city felt endless. Finally, he reached a nearby gas station. He jumped out of the car and called for help. The gas station staff called the police. When the police arrived, Alex told them everything that had happened. They went to the house, but to everyone's surprise, the house was gone. In its place was an empty lot covered in snow. The police said the house had burned down years ago, killing his parents in the fire. Alex couldn't believe it. He stood on the spot where the house had been and suddenly felt the wind rise behind him. Turning around, he saw them again. His parents. They were standing in the snow, staring at him, their faces exactly as they had been that night.
You promised to come back, son.
His mother whispered, her voice echoing across the empty lot. Alex tried to scream, but his voice was swallowed by the frosty air. By morning, neither his car nor any tracks leading from the gas station to the house were found. Alex seemed to have vanished with the wind, leaving only questions and a lingering sense of dread for those who heard the story.